because today is World Press Freedom Day. 2024, we get to celebrate the fourth estate, the role of the press and their freedoms by and large. And that is what our focus on Kickstart is going to be about. I am Priscilla Regina Lubowa. Thank you so much for being with us and morning at NTV. Now, as we get into this new dawn of a digital era, we need to navigate how journalism gets to jump on the wagon. Only in the 20th century did journalism actually attain status of a profession. Earlier conceptions of the journalism was that objectively it was a conduit of facts about the world, given way to more complex models of journalism, which was the role of institutional imperatives as well as individual biases, and also being recognized as highly influential in the line of journalism. Now, with the digitalized era taking an upper hand, we get to explore the translation of that on the media spaces, and the journalism and the press and the fourth estate, whatever name it is that you are familiar with, all that is going to be embedded in our conversations. Now, I'm pleased to be having seasoned journalists to have this discussion with me. On my immediate left, I'm joined by Mr. George Lugalambi. He's the Executive Director with the African Center of Media Excellence. And then next to him, we do have our very own reporter with Nation Media Group, and that is Abubaker, who's also one that has stood for the voice and the code of journalism in this country. I'm going to allow them their salutations, and then we'll get into the order of the day. Good morning to you, Mr. George.
Good morning, Priscilla, and good morning, viewers. It's a pleasure to be here this morning to talk about World Press Freedom Day, which is marked annually on the 3rd of May. All right. Thank you.
Abubaker.
Yes. Good morning, Priscilla. Good morning, viewers of NTV. The last time I was here, the studio was so different. And I think I can say some freedom here now, because the studio also looks new. Yeah. Okay. But I'm happy to be here and happy to celebrate World Press Freedom Day with my colleagues whom we do the same job and whom we go through a lot together. So I wish each and every journalist in this country and the world over a happy World Press Freedom Day.
All right, Mr. Lugalambi, you have been on this mile of journalism for some decades, and we want to understand from where you're seated and the gray hair that you have achieved over the course of your career. When you started out and joining this industry, what were your expectations versus the realities of the miles that you have walked?
Yes. So, yes, so you talk about decades, yes. So I'm a bit old school in journalism. I started my career in the early 90s, right out of, training at Makerere University. And the ambition really then was, as a young person was, very, very much excited about and very passionate about, journalism, about information, about media. It was, for me, there was no cooler profession really, to get into at that time. And I was very much trained, by some of the best, who were, practicing at the time, and worked with some of them. I remember at Makerere, we had, people like, Charles Onyangobo, who was really, very much, our idol, at the time. If you really wanted to model your career, we were looking at people like, the late Kevin, Ogena Lero, who used to work with, the Monitor at the time, and an entire crew of people at the Monitor, the David Balikowas, the late, Richard Tebere, quite very, very solid people. And of course, there were also other people, leaders of the media industry then, people like, William Pike, and many others. And these are people, brought us up, and we looked upon them, as people who are, very disciplined professionals. And people who really were in journalism, as change makers. And if you look at the work that people like, the trailblazers, the Wafula Gotos, at the weekly topic at the time, the whole transition to the monitor. If you looked at people who are working at the Vision then, a lot of them were, trailblazers, people like the late Akira Moto, who was an environmental crusader, but a journalist who was very, very much focused on a mission of improving, conservation and the way we treated the environment. And so I think, working and looking at all these models was very, very much, a fundamental driver for me in terms of committing to journalism and the media.
Mm-hmm. And then you got in there after the training, and the reality, was it as expected, as trained, or it was a completely different? Talk to us about your realities over your course of journalism.
So Claire, I think one of the things that was quite advantageous is that a lot of the people actually who trained us in the classroom were practicing media people. And for that reason, I remember I was very much, in touch with newsrooms, because even during my training at Makerere then in the Department of Mass Communication, and I was part of the pioneer class, very small class of 20 students. So we were very much, wired into the practice. Everything, in fact, every assignment that we did was designed, if it was a newspaper or writing assignment, we approached it as an assignment that was going to be published. So from the get-go, we were very much, drilled, into looking at journalism, as a product you're producing, for the public, and understand, the consequences of what you're doing. So I think that very much shaped us into, understanding the dynamics of the newsroom, the dynamics of practice, and interacting very much. And we did quite a lot of assignments, actually, even as students, as student journalists. We did assignments that were not just intended, to be submitted for a grade, but I remember very much, and I would say almost 50% of my classroom assignments actually ended up, being published, either with weekly topic or Monitor, or New Vision, actually, eventually as well, where I did also some freelancing work. Yes. Okay. And so I would say that from the classroom, to the newsroom, for me the transition was reasonably seamless. Yes, because as I said, from the get-go, as a trainee journalist, I understood very well and interacted extensively with people actually who are managing news. Okay,
Abubaker, what has been your experience? You go into school desiring to be a journalist, and you come out with expectations and an imagination of what that world looks like, but you're one who has trailed through smoke and dust to be able to do your job. Talk to us about your journey.
When I was starting journalism, I loved journalism at the go, because when I was filling my forms to join university, I only filled where I couldn't want to be given any other course. Right. So I only filled one space where I put want to do mass communication and everything. So when I handed over the papers back to the lady, she was like, no. At least you're supposed to fill all these three. I was like, I don't want to make a mistake, and they gave me any other course. So she was like, of course you pray, they give you what you want. And I was lucky, I was given what I wanted, because I wanted to be a journalist. I used to watch a lot of TV. I used to listen to a lot of radio. So that thing in me kept me wanting to be a journalist. And I was lucky, I was given the course, I studied. But during that time at campus, you could really tell that things are not the way you want them to be, because you are thinking about having a chance of being on radio when you're a student. You're thinking about being on TV. You're thinking about writing. But when you're at university, let me say some of the universities, or by the time we studied, that chance wasn't there. I think by the time you studied, Mr. Ruga, it was UBC UTV actually. So having a chance of going to UTV wasn't that easy. It was for the qualified, but we studied, and after I was lucky that my first attempt was the Daily Monitor, and I was lucky that I was given that position. Personally, I'm a photojournalist, and I've lived all my life as a photojournalist in the media. Things have gone on changing, because by the time we joined journalism, it was about you take a photo in the field and then you wait for it to be published the next day. But now things have changed. You take a photo, you have to directly upload it on your camera, or if you take a photo using your own phone, you have to send it immediately, because journalism has moved away from tomorrow or in the afternoon. It is instant. People are consuming news the way it is happening. So things have changed. We have also seen so many things changing away from, let me say, technology and everything. But because we entered journalism thinking everything is going to be okay, looking at how the life of a journalist is when people watch TV, the perception of journalists, they must be very wealthy people, they must be driving big cars, you know? But when you join journalism, that's when you realize that life is not as what you thought. You find so different things. The pay of journalists in this country is really lacking. And that's one of the things that hit people first when they join. Because actually now a few people...
The nature of payment is per item that you produce.
Yeah, actually.
And that's upon publication.
Yeah. If it's not published, then...
It's not published, there's no money.
Especially the freelance journalists. So you see your colleagues struggling. Of course, you also struggle at a point, but there are those who are really struggling. So when you look at how people are paid, when you look at the treatment they are outside by the security forces, because we all know it's not a secret anymore that police, military, and others that torture journalists, though these days it has a little bit changed.
It has its peak seasons.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because we are not into the season. You know, even the beating is seasonal. We are almost reaching the season of beating. So when we enter politics, then things change. But so many things have changed. Journalism has gone away from the other journalism that we knew. People want to read. And people don't want to read long stuff. So they are watching TikTok, short videos on
bullet
TikTok.
Points.
Yes, on X. Facebook has somehow phased out in this country because the old man decided that we shouldn't have Facebook. But people are consuming news each and every time. So if you don't change, of course you're going to be left behind, and others who have gone with change will leave you. So times have evolved, and so many things have changed in journalism. Okay.
Mr. Lugalambi, as we're having this conversation, it's World Press Freedom Day. Now, the two magic words there being press and freedoms. What are some of the freedoms that press have enjoyed in, for example, our country, Uganda? But on the other hand, what are also some of those freedoms that have been handicapped against journalism?
So, well, I think it's a mixed bag. Over the years, we've seen quite, significant amount of, repression, which, and I have always said that, how much freedom, media practitioners enjoy also depends very much on, the freedom available to citizens. So, because the media doesn't operate in a vacuum, and so to the extent that people who are people who are in power, people who have the authority, people who control access to the information. To the extent I think that they are, complying, with their constitutional obligations, for instance, to share information, to provide the public with information, to respect really the public's right to know, because ultimately journalism is contributing, to the ability of citizens to exercise their right to know. Citizens have got a right to know what is happening in Parliament. They have a right to know what is happening, decisions that are being made at the local level, with the local governments, district councils, with the ministries, because all these institutions are making policies, on behalf, of the citizen. So the citizen really has a right to know, and so the people who hold these offices, have an obligation, a constitutional obligation, and so oftentimes we've seen that our laws and our regulations tend to approach media from the side of control, rather than from the side, of facilitating, access to information. And I think that is a fundamental, mind shift. For instance, we've been working under a platform called the Uganda Media Sector Working Group, which is a multi-stakeholder platform where we, attempt to create, a conversation, among people, state actors and non-state actors, and also the media, to really come to an understanding of what does it really take to facilitate, the practice of journalism, whoever, is operating in that space. And so we've seen over the years, as the the quality of our laws, has also been changing over time. I think we've moved from a time where I think generally speaking, the operating environment in terms of the legal regime has improved. The regulatory environment has improved. I think the difficulty now is a lot of the the regulations and laws are being enforced for an analog generation, but now we're in a digital generation where you have where you used to look at the journal. I mean, think about any particular event. On a typical day, things are unfolding, but they're being covered by professional journalists. They're being covered by by people who have gadgets, who have tools. So technology has, in a sense, democratized access to information, has changed the entire approach, to journalism, and so the regulations and the laws and the policies, don't move as fast. And this is, I think, not just unique to journalism. If you think at finance, you think at banking, you think at any sector, whether law or whatever. Typically we know that policies and laws and regulations are normally are one step behind, because innovations happen rapidly. And so what I think the World Press Freedom Day always reminds us to think about how relevant the legal regime, the regulatory framework is for the journalist of today, for the information and news consumer of today, and that is a conversation that has to happen all the time. I don't think we'll ever get to a place where we say that now, even a good law today, technology can change, and then that law or policy certainly either becomes obsolete, it just doesn't apply to the conditions of now, and so that conversation has to be to keep going. And I think regulators also have to adopt a mindset that it is not always about controlling. You don't have to always keep controlling. I think you can facilitate and provide an environment where journalists can be facilitated to do a better job, and also facilitate citizens by educating them. There is a lot, I think, that you can achieve, through information literacy. Today we talk about digital literacy. I think there is so much that you can actually improve by simply investing, in digital literacy, training citizens. And the organization I work for, the African Center for Media Excellence, we put a lot of emphasis, on media literacy, not just for journalists, but also for citizens, information literacy, digital literacy, so that actually people understand that the gadgets that they have how they use them comes with consequences. You can treat something that is not factual, and it can cause a lot of damage. It can cause a lot of harm, and we see a lot of harmful information circulating.
Okay. So we'll come back to how you can protect journalism and also the public at the end of the day, because they get to consume this information. So by the time you correct your errors, it has moved leaps and bounds. But going back to the digital era, Baka, in this regard, you mentioned something that trickled me a little bit, in the sense that you do have journalism's arms being cut off by social media platforms, the X app, the Instagrams, Facebooks, and all these other big platforms that have masses, millions of subscribers to them. And so you get to have, for example, the X app coming out and say characters 120, and that is all the information you're limited to giving. But you have to give information. Does it allow you the freedom? Does it allow you the freedom is a question. And then you do have, the verification codes, the blue ticks here and there. If you're not blue ticked, the audience won't listen to you. And so it feels like the power of journalism, the code of journalism, is being taken away by another entity altogether that has seen the future before us.
Well, there's a lot of competition, if I may say, between the traditional media and then the new media. The new media is social media, if I may say. That's X, that's Instagram, Facebook. Of course, Facebook here, like I said before, has, for some people who have access to Facebook now, it's still another tool of communication. Yeah, I may say the competition is so high, and if the traditional media is not so careful, and actually if it doesn't change with change, it might be, it will struggle so much, if I can put it that way. But the upper hand that the traditional media has is the belief that people still have in them. Because when you look at the research that traditional media does, they research their stories. They publish a story with 90% facts, if not 100%, but at least 90% facts. And still, when you look at how the traditional media is operating, the budget on which they are operating is also high. So they make sure that at least they get back part of what they put in. So traditional media is also fighting, much as the space is being eaten up by the new modalities. When you look at X, I don't need 100,000 to open up an X account. I only need my smartphone. Even if you have 20 MBs.
Data of 1,000 shillings?
Yes, you can open up your own page, then you start publishing whatever you have. You don't need a lot of experience to operate it. You don't need a lot of English. You don't need a lot of vernacular, because it takes in any language that you want, you'll be able to publish. It's not controlled, if I may say. Of course, somehow it's controlled by the owners, where someone can report you and then maybe they put down what you've uploaded. But it also goes through stages. So there's a lot of fighting that is going to happen between the traditional media. Actually, you see, even the traditional media is also trying to adapt.
Yeah, but still it has to go through the checks and balances for it to be able to catch up. For example, you're in the field, hot story, opposition has done something, and it's breaking, and so you do have something 1, 2, 3 on YouTube that is readily sending that information out without the checks and balances. Whereas you, on the other side, under the media house, you still have to first send it back to Beth. It has its checks and balances verified, and then it can be given out to the public. So that tug of war there, how do we manage that tug of war?
It's about consistency and believing in the journalistic methods of working. If you believe that coming first doesn't mean being, let me say, owning the whole story, it's about giving facts. So if you stick to what you're supposed to be doing, if you stick to giving people facts, of course people will still come back to you. They say, someone has broken a story. Let me go to the NTV website and see what's there. What is NTV saying? What is Monta saying? Even if you break the story, you might not have the facts. Someone just wants to tweet, someone has, there's a nasty accident. Then they put pictures of blood and everything. Someone will be like, let me run to NTV and see what they have to say about the whole story. So NTV will give you the whole story of what really happened, doing interviews, Vox Pops with different people. And that's what makes the difference between the, let me actually say, citizen journalism and the real journalism or the traditional journalism, where people do interviews, know the whole story, and tell the day-to story. Because even right now, something happens, you also post, Monta checks and everything, they post. Like this picture of the train is working and what. These other people will post about the train, they will take pictures in the train as it's moving, record videos. But then the next day, Monta will bring you a different story of how people are going to gain from the train working again. So the day-to story makes it different for social media and then the journalism.
Right.
So there's just that journalism of excitement where people just post each and everything. And actually, you find that even the people on social media, or even people that have websites, they still lift stories from the newspapers. They still watch TV and then write as they're watching TV. So the relevance of our traditional journalism is not dying. We only need to adapt and fill in the gaps that these people are leaving behind.
Okay, Mr. Lugalambi, in face of what he has submitted, I know that at the end of the day, there's pillars to journalism. You do have accountability, accuracy, there's also independence, there's humanity, impartiality. All these things have to be embedded in what is put out there. But also, we are rushing against time, because digital era is real-time information, real-time news. And so how does traditional journalism actually ensure that such pillars are held in the face of real-time news?
Now, sure, Priscilla, I think the fundamentals of journalism have not changed, regardless of the shift to digital platforms. Because journalism fundamentally is about verification, right? So, in other words, that as a journalist, you are trained and your experience really teaches you to verify information. You don't take things on face value. And something happens, always your instinct is, I need to check, I need to double check. And today you actually need to triple check. So those fundamentals, whether you are, running, a digital platform, regardless of the pressure to put, information out there, we always say, do you want to get it fast, or you want to get it right? I believe you can get it fast and also get it right. So what then would it take? You have to invest. I think that news organizations need to invest. If you look at some of the international news organizations, and recently I attended a conference in Sweden where we had a presentation by organizations like the New York Times, and they were telling us about how they are covering, for instance, the war in in Gaza, and you look at the kind of investment in terms of, you know, visual journalism. You have an entire unit, you know, whose job, exactly, whose job, you know, at the back end, but also at the front end, you know, people who are there in the field collecting this video, and you have a team processing this video in real time. So it takes investment. You know, news organizations like NMG, I would like to believe, you know, are looking at investing in quality news, and quality news actually means that you get it fast, but you also, you know, get it right.
Okay. Yes. And so from Baka, on your side, you are one who has had to deal with this in real time in the field, being fast and right at the same time, and that quick transition on ensuring that those two are catered to as you deliver on your work as a journalist. And we want to get to know that experience. What has it taught you, and how can you pass it on to other people?
One, because I'm a photojournalist, and as a photographer, you have a camera. Your camera should be connected with your phone. So you use Wi-Fi. When you take pictures, you use Wi-Fi to download the pictures, or you use Bluetooth. But basically it's Wi-Fi. You download the pictures, you take them, download them, and then you sent to the editors. It's not you who tweets, actually. So now that's the difference between the traditional media and then other guys doing the same work that we are doing. So you send to the editor, and then you also have to write. So you know the story, you have to write the story. At times you miss out on some things. That's a fact. Yeah, you miss out on some pictures as you're downloading and then as you're writing, because at times you have to delay a little bit because different activities are going on. So you may not download at that time that they want you to download, but you still have to be the time, because you also don't want to leave other things to happen when you are not there. So as things happen, you also have to be very fast. It's like driving in traffic. When you are slow, everybody will come and bypass you. So you might end up reaching tomorrow. But as you also try to drive in fast, you cross in the gaps, you make sure that you're careful, so that you don't cause accidents on the road. You don't break people's legs, because there are people crossing. There are borders in our city. So you have to make sure that you touch all the points. You have the story right, because the editor you're sending the story to is not in the field. So you have each and everything. You have the gadgets that can enable you. When I was covering NAM in Munyonyo, I saw a Japanese. He had a camera. He had a phone mounted onto his camera. So he would take videos, taking photos, recording audios at the same time. But he still had to write something. So that's where we are moving to. How fast are you as a journalist of this era? How can you do all these things? But we try our best. We try to do what we can do. But one of the things that is slowing each and everything, and it's a fact, is the payment that the journalists get. Me, I always want to rotate around.
So Simba wakati yao. Why I wanted Baka to speak into that is that we understand when you say your earlier comments on investment, while we do have the general investment that a media house must invest in this new era of digital, there's investment of the boots on ground through which they get to do their work as a media house. Now, the case of Abubaker, he's a one-man show, one camera, one phone. He must have a computer. He must have data. You know, hopefully on that day the data is able to transmit his work very fast. And so you get to see that it's one person doing the work. Now, you're one who has traversed and, you know, had the privilege of experiencing other media houses. What disadvantage does Baka have in enabling journalism dispense right and fast?
Well, I think Baka has advantages, because he has the ability, to operate as a multimedia journalist, right? Yeah. In other words, he can produce with voice, audio. He can produce with video. He can produce with images, and he's also trained and has the ability, to work with text. And the best from what we know about how news audiences, consume, information, you need to get them, because people are distracted. People have, we know that people, it's very rare. I mean, the way to get people's attention is to get to them, through the media and through the method that they best, receive and process information. So, Abubaker has an advantage to be able to produce and deliver a story, in these different formats. That is really the best. If you look at
but he has mentioned something in there that while he's doing that, he's missing out on some other information that is also vital.
Yes,
for what he's covering.
Yeah, true, and which also brings me to my next thing. That what I have seen is that media houses that really produce quality, they do journalism that is collaborative.
Yeah,
and so it's very rare. It's not really possible for one individual, Abubaker out in the field, to be able to process, a scene, a situation, and be able, to interpret it,
translate it,
intelligibly, if it's the same person operating all these things. So that is why actually I would say that I wanted to make the point that investment in people is very, very important. It's the core. You can invest in all this technology, but you also need to invest in the system
Mr. Lugalambi,
that enables people to operate.
Is it investment in people or investment in skills? Because Abubaker is multi-skilled, right?
Yes.
But in his being multi-skilled, which the company wants, he's not delivering 100%, on the coverage that he's giving. Yeah. So should we, as media houses, should the focus be on investment in people or investment in skills?
But the skills reside in people.
Yeah.
Right. So investing in people is fundamentally investing in their capacity, to do things, and that capacity means that yes, you build their skills, but I also believe very strongly that you need to build their knowledge. Journalism has to be knowledge driven, because the difference between a professional journalist and a citizen journalist is that a professional journalist is informed, has a command of the subject matter that they are covering. So investing in knowledge, and journalists have to be learning constantly. Science is changing, innovations are coming up, a lot of things. So you need to be learning on a regular basis. So and that is not something that we can take for granted. Part of the investment also has to be in enabling journalists to actually learn. I run an organization that we pride ourselves on being a media support organization that supports knowledge-driven journalism, because we believe knowledge is so essential. Anybody can actually, anybody who spends time with a gadget, they are going to become perfect in terms of the skill of using that gadget if they spend enough time with it. But not that many people, have the motivation and the skill, to seek out knowledge, interpret it and be able to process it, in a way that is going to be intelligible, to be able to communicate it to, to audiences or to other people. Okay. So I would really think that yes, skills, get your, people in the news, system to have those skills.
Baka, let me come back to you. In that scenario, you have your camera, your computer, your phone, and you must use all of them concurrently in order to deliver on the coverage that you're doing. What would you desire be the ideal situation for you in order to dispense your work to the best of your ability?
One is the security around me. If you really have no security for your gadgets, then it's really useless, because as you have a camera on you, you have a phone doing different things. Behind you, someone wants to snatch that phone, and then you don't secure. Security, by the way, is broad. There is that job security. You're not sure if what you're doing is appreciated. Then
occupational security as well.
Exactly. So you don't know how it ends, but security is key. And then let me say the wages. You know, journalists do a lot. I don't want to talk about me as a person, because personally I may have a chance of having 2 meals. The journalists who don't have that chance of having 2 meals, yet they have been working from morning to evening. The pay is so low, because when you look at what some people think about us and what we are really going through is different. There are colleagues who even go 3 months without payment, but they are doing exactly what you're doing. Your lucky NMG pays you by 27th. They even send an email just in case money delays. They will send an email apologizing, but there's someone who hasn't even received payment in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months. No apology. The only thing they have in their ears is go and use your camera to look for money. So extortion starts from there and everything. But then the other thing is the security. The security forces, the torture of journalists is also, of course, it's not a secret in this country that journalists are beaten, their equipment is taken, destroyed, and everything. Yeah, I think those are some of the things that we can look at. Okay. But the trainings as well.
On top of that, wouldn't you want a support team to be able to do your work better?
Yeah, of course.
You take the photos, someone quickly does the editing and passes them on. You take the videos, someone quickly does the editing and passes them on.
There's a support team that is behind there doing so many things. We actually, when I'm going to the field, I don't go alone as a person. I go with a writer, I do the photos, but still, I still have to do these other things because as the writer is also focusing on writing the story that is going on the website, I'm focusing on getting good quality images. I'm focusing at also breaking the story. So it's a team that is doing different things. Okay. But there are people who don't have that chance.
And that is where I would like to
so the one-man army.
Engage the ED here. Because at the end of the day, we do have Baka is privileged to be under a media house that has direction and it's focusing on media over Africa for Africa. But other media houses primarily, you know, built and set up for different purposes, mostly commercial and political reasons, and so their care is not to cater to ensuring that Baka as a journalist does his job as a fourth estate to the best of his ability, but how much they can influence with all that ownership, and then when it comes to, you know, dividends and rewards of the business, that is their focal point. How do you deal with such in this era of digitalization, which you emphasize must require investment as an organization?
Right, yes. I mean, so first I would say that there's really nothing wrong with someone wanting to use a media platform to make money if they think that it's an investment, a worthy investment, because it's and I think it would be a good thing for people, you know, who value media, you know, as an investment that they can commercialize, you know, and make good returns out of it. So I think that in itself is a good thing. And the more we would have of that people, of such people, you know, coming into the sector, the better. What I think is critically important, which we've also talked about, is what is really the intention of investing in the media industry. I think it's very important to understand that media is not a business like any other business. It comes with certain, you know, social obligations because you are dealing in a product that is so critical that you really need to be, you need to have good reasons for why you want to invest in media. It can cause a lot of damage if it's in the hands, you know, of people who are only looking at making the money, but really without you know, thinking about the consequences of what you know, the news that they are putting out. So people who are owning, you know, media houses, you need to be thinking very critically that what is really my motivation. If it is just to use, you know, my platform or media news organization as a channel to hit back at my political, you know, opponents, then, and we know many people, you know, have set up, you know, radio stations just for the purpose, you know, because they have the money, so they can use it as a channel for their political campaigning, you know, other than that I think, you know, there is a market here, so they are not looking at the journalism at all. They are definitely in the business for the wrong reason. Yet I also believe that you can actually run a viable media house commercially, and at the same time produce quality, you know, quality journalism. So the two shouldn't really be mutually exclusive, and I think they are examples, or at least, you know, attempts for people to do both, run successful, commercially successful media enterprise while at the same time supporting journalists and investing in real talent. The one more thing that I wanted to say as well in relation to the question of welfare, I think in Uganda, one of the problems that we really need to work hard at is organizing. In the media industry, we are very poorly organized as labor. So that's why I've mentioned that people talent is so critical, but we are not well organized.
When you say organization, please break that down.
So that means organizing yourself in able to bargain for better working conditions. In Kenya, you know, they have, you know, if their editors guild, their Kenya media sector, you know, working group have worked so hard to ensure that they prevail upon owners and proprietors of media houses actually to provide a living, a minimum wage. Actually, in the Kenyan market, you know, journalists are actually paid. There is a minimum wage. So nobody is going to open a radio station, a TV station, a news platform unless they can guarantee, and they actually prove it, that they are paying a standard minimum wage that has been agreed across the industry. So there are some of those labor issues that we are still struggling with in Uganda, but I really hope as we continue, for instance, like I have mentioned, the Uganda Media Sector Working Group, which I helped to co-found and I coordinate. One of the things that we want to do is start engaging on those issues to get journalists, media practitioners to organize as a labor force. The way musicians are now really fighting for their rights, you know, get the intellectual property and all those sorts of things. Media journalists are suffering the same things. Abubaker takes pictures and people take them and use them for whatever reason without, you know, even doing the minimum thing of crediting him, but let alone even paying, you know, for those products.
Okay, I'm glad we've gone that direction. Abubaker has had that experience last year through the Uganda Journalists Association, going to the courts of law with the elections that were meant to be in the courts of law. We're of the view that they stand under no law in order to exist in the first place, and so that challenges the debate that you know, Judge here is actually trying to unfold. Let's talk about that from your perspective.
When it comes to leadership in journalism, that's one of the worst thing that is happening to us. We don't have a leadership as journalists. Everybody thinks can lead, and without any skills, without anything. And everybody is knowledgeable about journalism and everything. Like here said, we are not organized. And if you're not organized, you can't do anything. Some of us wanted to see how we can organize this institution of journalism and what we can have out of the organization that we have. But there are people who are fighting tooth and nail to see that we don't get united, we don't have a common voice. They are fighting, they're out there fighting. You only hear about Uja when it comes to elections, and maybe a day like this, that's when they organize something and try to have press conferences year in, year out. You never hear them come out when it comes to payment, you know. Anyway, I don't want to go into that kind of direction, because they will think that we are against them, but when you talk facts, then you're fighting. When you tell them the truth, then you're fighting. We've even reached an extent of going to court, trying to seek for justice, just organizing an election. We are the people who talk about free and fair, always on TV singing about free and fair, yet we can't have a free and fair election in our own association. So people look at us. People are looking at us, by the way, and they are asking questions. Charity begins at home. Where's the charity beginning at home? We are failing on just simple elections. So the divide and rule method in Uganda is going to fail each and everything. The musicians you are talking about also have they're also in two groups. One group is saying this, and then the other one is saying the other. So divide and rule, people are trying to come up with different organizations, because they feel they are not fitting in the one body that has to be the main leader of journalists in this country. The women in journalism, the female journalists have started their own thing. Then the sports journalists have started their own. Then the people reporting at Parliament. So whoever starts up something then runs to institutions. So they are like institutional associations for journalists. Parliament, it's the speaker who has to endorse each and everything. When you come to sports, at least USPA is trying, but they still have that hand in them that has FUFA, but at least for them they try. You see, they are trying and fighting. When you look at other associations, of course, we term them as associations, but these are just small bodies trying to lead journalists. Right. Each and every organization is attached to something, and then those are like the bosses. They dictate. We
can't run away from the fact that organization is one of the biggest tools that we can actually work on or work towards in order to fight for the core issues of journalism at the end of the day. But let's move away from that.
Before we move away, like I said, the divide and rule method in this country is going to spoil each and everything, and then the association. So we pray that the country listens, and then we become one body.
Okay, all right. So as we come to the close of this conversation, how does traditional media prepare itself and suit up for the digital era that is before us?
Well, Priscilla, there's nothing like traditional media anymore. In fact, I even often say that even the whole term digital journalism, for me, has no meaning, frankly, because what is journalism if it's not digital? So journalism, by its very nature, by default, is digital, period. And so I don't want, even in terms of concepts, distinguish that this is traditional, this is digital. It's now, the platforms, the consumption of news and information is by and large digital. So I think we've now moved. So in that sense, I would say that what is needed is always what has been needed. Journalists, be professional, have the discipline, research, verify, be curious. It doesn't matter whether you are reporting that for a newspaper, because as we know, the news even news organizations that started as newspapers are looking at an audience that doesn't consume an article just as a newspaper piece. They want to get that information on their device, whatever it is.
All right.
So the thing is, digital is very much now wired into the very fabric of journalism.
Mr. George Lugalambi, Executive Director with the African Center for Media Excellence, thank you so much for your inputs. Abubaker, Lubowa, thank you so much for your efforts in creating the strides necessary for upcoming journalists to walk through. And to the media fraternity out there, we wish you a very wonderful day. We're going to take a bet to this conversation. When we return, we'll go into the final band of Morning at NTV. Do stay with us.